Hope I am able to show you some new features that may not be aware of, and see why you should be using it, Azure Data Studio, on a pretty regular basis at this point. So let's go ahead and start with the details. If you want to play along, you can learn more and you can download Azure Data Studio from aka.ms/get Azure Data Studio. And that's the docs page. It'll allow you to see some more details about it and also go ahead and download it. Azure Data Studio is an open source project. It's available in GitHub. And that means you can see the code yourself. You can decide something would work better a different way and code it up and submit a pull request, and they may accept it and merge it in. I don't know if I've done any code changes to this one yet, but I probably will at some point. There we go. Real quick about me. My name is Aaron Nelson. I'm a data and AI consultant at Microsoft. Former Microsoft MVP for the data platform. I'm on Twitter as SQL Variant. That's also my blog. And I'm also on GitHub as SQL Variant. If you follow me there, you'll see some of my scripts that I post, and they're on various topics. Some of them regular T-SQL, some of them mostly, I'll admit, PowerShell, but also some Jupyter books, Jupyter notebooks, also known here as SQL notebooks, and other odds and ends that I post. So today is all about this great thing, Azure Data Studio, and that's pretty much all the slides I've got for you. So I'm ready to dive right on in and get started. So this is my cheat sheet here. So I'm sure that everyone is already familiar with Ssms and probably uses it as their daily driver. Jeremy, could you make a poll that asks how many people are use Azure Data Studio for their daily driver and how many people use Ssms as their daily driver for their query work?
Can do.
Thanks. So while that's going on, I'll just go ahead and dive into one of the connection points that they've put into here. I believe this started with Ssms version 18.0 earlier this year. So let's say I click somewhere in Ssms Object Explorer. Let's say it's on my AirStats database and I want to do a new query, but I'm trying to answer a question that maybe one of my coworkers is asking, and I want to walk them through it, but I want to put in some comments with it, but I want to kind of spruce up the comments. I don't want them to be dull. I'm going to be able to put some emphasis on a couple keywords, and I want to maybe underline, highlight, bold, any of that kind of stuff. I can, instead of writing the query here, I can go to Azure Data Studio and I can say no query. That would be basically the same experience as we have here in Management Studio, although maybe slightly better. Or what I could do is a new notebook. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this part out of the way because it also covers one of the points that I want to let you know about. With this being an open source project, Azure Data Studio comes in two release patterns, if you will. There's the monthly stable build. They just released another one, I think earlier this week or last week for October. And then there's a insiders build that gets built out and refreshed nearly every day. And I tend to work on the insiders build because I typically am working on stuff that's still in the process of being delivered, and I'm helping with the usability. But I'm also able to install the regular stable version side by side. I've, funny enough, actually had some trouble updating the stable version, and I've been putting off until today to go ahead and get my stable version updated until after I get done with the session. And I didn't think I was going to need it, but it turns out there is actually one thing that I do need that's not working in the insiders build, so I might have to turn it over to Eugene to be able to show you that. So while I've been talking here, it went ahead and spun up that query for me, sorry, that notebook for me. So let me give you an idea, lay of the land here. Let's say I'm trying to, as I said, I'm trying to help my coworker out with something they have a question about, and it's with one of the tables, and I want to show them how they can query it real quickly. So it's this on-time performance table. So I could start and say, here's how you find data you're looking for, right? And that's just in a regular text cell. And so I'm going to move this around a little bit. Once I get that done, from here, I can insert my code cell afterwards. And then I could be like, count star from, I think it was what, data mart dot this, oops, I pulled in too much. That's all right. On time performance is the name of the table I was going after. And I can go ahead and hit run here, and it'll give me my results. So I think this is 72 million rows. And I might have been looking for something more specific in this table that I'm trying to dive them down to. Might be something by date. So I can put the part year, and then flight date, right? And then I'll just make this my GroupBy as well. Oops. And
So just to share the poll results, pardon me, we have 25 votes for SSMS and 0 for Azure. So
this is a great session.
Pretty great.
All right, so let's go ahead and run this. And we'll see, once I hit the run button there, it went ahead and cleared out the results. Now, these results are actually going to stay with the notebook if you decide. You can save your results with your notebook. So I can put in here as flights, just to update my column here, and as year flight. And what's going to happen is every time I run this, whatever the last one is, it's going to keep that one hanging around. And it's going to persist this in a JSON store, or JSON store, whichever way you want to pronounce that. I'm open to either pronunciation. I just want to make that clear. I don't have much of an opinion. But anyways, here's our results right here. And obviously, what I'm probably going to build is something a little more complicated than this. Maybe you start with the year that has the highest number of flights, and then you go to the next thing and you look at this, and I'm going to give them more descriptions. And the way I'm going to do that is just keep on giving them more cells. So I can insert a text after here, and I can say, okay, the next step is to, and then I can tell them whatever it is. And on the next one, I'll go ahead and make another code one after, and I'll say select, and it's going to be count star from, and it's going to be that same table. One, there we go. And maybe my instruction is actually going to be something along the lines of, and I'm going to leave an incomplete query here, and I'm going to tell them it's going to be this flight date here. And I'm going to say, in my instruction here, I'm going to say copy, the one that you need. And we can actually copy these results out. Unfortunately, I think I'm on an older version that doesn't let you do it. I promise if you're on the newer version, this will work. And then you can tell them plug in from the results of the first query and put it in here. So that's how you dive down on your things. So I'm going to go ahead and say save as on this one, and call this my Error stats.
Hey, Aaron.
Tour? Yep.
So I had to jump off and back on to get Docker working and all that, but some questions. Well, I didn't have my hard drive plugged in, and so it freaked out.
Gotcha.
So there were a couple questions that kind of came up, and I don't know if these got answered while I was briefly off.
No. Haven't heard
but yeah, so people are asking, okay, does this come with SSMS? It's Azure Data Studio, so is this just for Azure Data Sources, right? So answer that a little in the chat, but could you elaborate on like where this fits in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so let's start with the first one. I'm going to do insert text before. I'm going to actually answer these questions right inside the notebook. This is Aaron's opinion, and I am not speaking as a Microsoft employee. This is Aaron's personal opinion.
Are you on the Microsoft campus? Are you allowed to voice separate opinions?
I think I am. My personal opinion is you may be familiar with a product called VS Code, right? Well, my personal opinion, this should have been called VS Data for the exact reason that you were just pointing out. So I think it should have been called VS Data, VS Code, VS Data, boom, done, you get it, right? But it does a lot more than just Azure Data Sources. Everything's on-prem here that I'm doing right now. So let's be clear about that. It says local hosts. These are my local machines. I've got some Dockers here. You know, all of these are local Dockers, to be clear about that. These are great questions. So I'll put in here, what is it? Download. Oh, it's so sorry. Yes. And this, what I'm doing right now is actually a perfect example of why these notebooks are so handy. So, and I wouldn't have thought about it if you hadn't interrupted me with that question, so I love it.
Have it help.
So what I can do here is I can make this actually be a clickable link. So let's say maybe at the beginning, middle, end, somewhere in your instructions, it's like, go to this SharePoint page and get this thing. Or when you're done with it, export it to Excel, right? And go ahead and send it to SharePoint. I'm actually going to go ahead and hit save now. I'm going to close out of this older version of Azure Data Studio. And I'm going to go over to my insiders build that I've got going on over here because I want to go ahead and use the newer features. So where on earth did I save that file now? I didn't even look. So what other questions were there?
It was basically that. Does it come with SSMS?
Nope.
And is it just for Azure Data Sources, right?
Great questions all around. So it comes separately, and important point, and I already glossed over it. It is cross-platform. This particular product does work on a Mac or on Linux. So if you're one of those people who has a Mac and has to fire up a VM just to be able to run SSMS, well, guess what? You don't have to do that anymore. You can use this. It's not a replacement for SSMS, but it does do a lot of the things that SSMS is capable of doing. And it's continuing to evolve and get new features all the time. Okay, so that's where it's at. Let me just make sure I can find it real quick. Open file for that. Get my illustrious self-paced training, which is kind of my own catch-all of stuff. And Airstats guided tour. All right, so here we are, we're in that newer version. And the reason I came over here, you can tell it's the newer version by just looking at the way that the extensions thing looks different. Looks less like the Uber thing. So one of the great features of the Azure Data Studio query pane experience, I'm not sure what the exact terminology is. I'm not a product person. I don't work on the SQL tools team or anything like that. I'm not, I'm just a consultant. But this query pane right here, the results pane, you can right click on it and take your results and save them as an Excel file, as CSV. JSON, I realize most people probably wouldn't do that, but you might in the future, and we'll go over some of that why later. But you can come in here, select your results, do copy or copy with headers, save it as Excel, and once you save your results, you might have, your instruction right after here. Insert text after, right? Your instruction might be, take the Excel file you just created and upload it to SharePoint, right? Or somewhere else, an FTP server for all I know. I don't know what your needs are inside your environment. And there we go. So now we've got more instructions to it. So we're telling someone how to troubleshoot something on themselves. They've got the queries there. They might need to make some edits to the queries. It all depends. Or it might be, don't touch anything, just run it as it is. And when you save this off, again, you're also going to be saving off these results in there so that they can know what it looked like the last time you ran it, if you want to. So if I do file, just to illustrate that a little, and do file save, I've got my results in here. I can come up here and hit clear results, and we see that the file just got changed. All my results disappeared, and I can now save it, and now it won't have all the results stored from my queries in JSON. So I hope that helps start answering a little bit of where this fits, what it does, and what you can connect to. Let's finish out answering that question with the extensions. Is it just for Azure? No, it's, like I showed you, I've got my local databases here. You can connect to.
Pardon me, Aaron. We just have a question from the audience, just in case it ties in. Will Azure Data Studio eventually replace SSMS? Is a question
no, I don't. It's a great question. No, I don't think so. And it's not my call, and definitely talk to someone on the product team. I think they're going to coexist at least for a long time. There's just so much tooling inside of SSMS. The point of making this tool is to do things that you can't do in SSMS, or that it would just be really hard to do in SSMS, and it's just easier to use this. Azure Data Studio is a fork of VS Code, and just use that as the way to be able to get those features in front of people. So it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel when you could take that same engineering effort and spend the time building a new feature that would have been harder to implement inside of SSMS.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, it's very different goals. I think the whole point is that SSMS is kind of this scalpel designed for one main thing, which is administering SQL Server, whereas Azure Data Studio is this Swiss Army knife, right? Because as I'm sure you're going to touch on, like you've got a button there for workbooks, you've got a button there for PowerShell, you got a button there for Docker, and the thing is, like, whenever you're just trying to cut stuff, maybe having a corkscrew doesn't make sense, right? With SSMS, a lot of the things you could do here just wouldn't make sense.
Right, absolutely. So that's the one I was going to. So let me go back to recommended. What does it connect to? Let's finish that real quick and find in here. Actually, I should just type and search. So there's a Postgres SQL extension. So if you do work with that as well, I've got mine disabled right now because I was trying to limit the number of extensions that I had, and I unloaded a few of them. But there is one out there. You can download it. Connects up with Postgres SQL. This has been out there since, I believe, March or April. And you can connect with, use it to connect to your Postgres SQL databases and do what you need with it. All right, so, and mainly this is a database tool. Right now it doesn't have connections for SSAS or anything like that. Although I hear SSAS is one of the most highly voted requests out there on the GitHub repo. So definitely invite you guys to go out there and upvote that if you would like to see SSMS and SSAS capabilities inside of here. So now we've got that shown to you, and I think we've got all that questioning covered. Eugene, do you have time to swap over to you for that schema compare? Did you get it working?
So I think I've got it set up, but right now my server needs a second schema to compare to.
Compare to like 10TB.
Oh, that could work.
All right. Why not? What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. So let's see. I'll let you go with that for another minute, and I'll go on to the next one on my list, whatever that was. So let's see. We've got Azure Data Studio. We're going to do compare here in a second. Right. aka.ms/bp check. If you want to see one of the best examples of a notebook right now, let's go back over here to, sorry, let me close down a little bit of this. My little guided tour that I was doing with you. And let's add another section. It's going to be text after. We're going to say, put this on here, and we're going to say, BP check is the best practices. Okay, right? So there we go. If you, so this is in a header, so it doesn't do that. What I do is, these are little so this language that we're using here, since no one's using this as their daily driver, I'll go ahead and say this is Markdown that we're working in. It's a great language. It's like HTML for dummies, and I love it. Pretty easy to work with, and I'm not very good at HTML, so that's probably why I love it so much. So I just put in a link here. Yes, I want to go ahead and open this link, and it's going to take me out to their GitHub repo for the BP check right here. This is a SQL notebook. I've already gone ahead and downloaded it. It does some best practices checking against your SQL Server instances. You run it, I believe you can run it per database, or you can run it against an entire instance of SQL Server. I've already got one, I've already got that BP check loaded up in this instance right here. And I'll walk you through that, a little bit of that in a few minutes when we get to the PowerShell capabilities. But before I get there, please feel free to go to BP check and go ahead, aka.ms/BP check, download it, and start taking a look around. Eugene, are you up now, or should I go on to more extensions? I'll go into more extensions. All right, so you may notice that.
Sorry, I meant to say, I think I muted myself. I think I've got it running, but right now it's taken a minute. So,
all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'll just go with these for now. So there's a wealth of extensions over in Visual Studio Code, and there's a Docker extension over there. And a lot of these extensions work great in Azure Data Studio. I'm over here in Visual Studio Code right now. And if I want to be able to use this inside of Azure Data Studio, all I have to do is click here, which will then take me to the page for that extension. Give this right-hand content here a second to load. And then just come over here and see where it says download extension. I just hit that button. It's going to download it. I'm going to get a copy of it locally. I wonder if I even have the most recent version. I haven't downloaded it in a while. But I'm going to go ahead, get that downloaded. And once I have it there, I can come over to Azure Data Studio, just do file and install extension from v6 package. And now, as you can see, I've got that, that Docker extension running right here. Even though it's not in the marketplace, it does work well and works great for me. And I keep it in there all the time because I do a lot of work with Docker these days. If if I can avoid it, I will never install another local instance directly on my laptop. It'll always be a Docker instance or an instance up in the cloud somewhere.
We just have a few more questions popping in for you. Is this a good time, or do you want to maybe clear out what you're going through right now?
Let me do one more example of an extension, then I'll take the questions.
Awesome, sounds good.
So if you're interested in Python, there's some Python for VS Code, Python, I think this one is the official one. You can do the same thing, go to the page, download it, and try it out and see if it works inside of Azure Data Studio. All right, there's plenty more out there like that. There's also one for Kubernetes. I've got that one working just fine. So I highly recommend people give that a try and check it out. Let's go ahead with the questions now.
Awesome. So first, just to confirm, someone said that it appeared as though you started it from SSMS. Does it install as an add-on? Yes. I just wanted to confirm with them.
Independent.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then also from PA Shot, he wanted to know, is there a shortcut key for install from VSIX, or is that left
V6.
to the user? V6. Cool.
Yeah, we call it V6.
I like that.
I felt like a dork until I realized, I heard people, I'm like, why are they talking about engines? I don't get it.
That's
what I finally go, oh.
It's that pop song, right? Like a V6, like a V6.
That's a G6.
Yeah, I know.
I think that we could remake it and people would love it. I think they'd really get on board with that.
So there is probably, if you do Control-Shift-P, and I'm sure there is a shortcut for install from V6. So I'll go over Control-Shift-P here or Command-Shift-P, depending on what you're on in just a moment. So go ahead with those questions that we had. Was there any more?
I think that was
it.
It.
Yeah, you're such a good answerer.
And I've got schema compare working whenever we want to get around to that.
All right, so let's go ahead and kick it over to you right now.
Sure.
Because what I'm trying to show is that schema compare works. And unfortunately with my build, it's not working so well. But Eugene, there we go, perfect.
Yep.
Eugene's got it up and running. So Eugene, you want to show them how you started that?
Yeah, so first I had to install it, right? So I went to View and Extensions, and I did a search for schema compare and just installed it, which is great. And then what I was able to do is you just click on any database and you say schema compare.
And that doesn't come up until after you have the extension installed.
Yeah. And then you specify what's your target. So if you have a backpack file or a DACpack file, great. Or you can basically say, okay, I want to compare model to maybe tempdb. Ideally, there should be not much of anything in either of those two. And you say, okay, let's go ahead and compare it. Now for me, it probably took a minute or two. But here we can see when I compared master to MSDB, and we can see that, okay, these objects are in MSDB, but not in master.
Okay. And then from there, you've got your generate script options. You can start that as you can save it as a SCMP file so that you can do it later. You can apply it right this minute. When you do generate script, you're able to apply it as a SQL command file, if you're familiar with that.
That's awesome.
So not a T-SQL, but a SQL command file, a la Invoke SQL command, And yeah, there we go. So perfect. Thanks for helping out and showing that. And that actually reminded me of something I totally forgot about. So let me take back over.
Yep.
Show my screen. Show that. All right. So you saw that Eugene had a little bit darker window up, and I have a really light color scheme going on here. And that's actually part that is entirely due to the fact that I have the PowerShell extension installed, which you'll be able to find very easily in the marketplace. Once you do have that installed, there's an option over here for color theme. Once it's installed, then you get a new color theme called PowerShell ISE. There's some other ones in here that you can get by default. So dark Azure Data Studio default, that's in there. Let's do some color themes. So what I just did was I did Control-Shift-P, or if you're on a Mac, Command-Shift-P, and that brings up the palette to search for this menu. So I can bring up my list of different themes that are available to me. Yeah, Abyss, I think that's the one I'm using over in VS Code. There's some other rather light ones. Let's see, there's also, I think this Quiet Light, I think that's the purple one. Yeah, so if you like the purple colors from Visual Studio, there you go. There's one for you. I'm just gonna go ahead and switch mine back to the ISC. So if you've been waiting for a decade to get dark mode in Ssms, well, you at least have it in Azure Data Studio, so maybe that's a good reason for you to switch over. All right, so let me go back to my cheat sheet here and see how, so we've shown the best practices check. Let's show you the menus. I've shown you a bunch of these already. I'll get to another couple productivity enhancements here. But let's see, what was the next thing on the list? Right. So if you are on Windows, and this only works on Windows, and you've got Ssms installed, and just one more thing I'm going to show you, I've got Ssms also, it's got the registered servers, which anyone with more than 3 servers probably ought to be using. And it can also see the connections inside of Azure Data Studio and reuse those. So it's pretty cool tie-in there. I'm going to go ahead and close out Ssms right now, because I wanted to show you that what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go over here to one of my databases, my AirStats databases, and I'm going to right-click on the database. And let's say I want to generate scripts. Like I want to generate scripts to script out the database, get the create statements for the tables. I just closed Ssms, and even though I did, wait for it, come on, pop up. It's going to go ahead and call the program that is the generate scripts wizard. So here it is for me. So in this case, I just want to generate scripts for the tables. I can uncheck which ones are there. You see Ssms is still closed, only have Azure Data Studio open. I can come in here, decide my location to script this out, single files, 1 file per object, hit my advanced button. This is, really great because I can come in here and I can make sure to do things like script out my indexes. That's set to false. Yes, I want them. I can change my other options here for scripting, whether it's schema or schema and the data. I wouldn't want to do that with this one because it's a pretty big database, but then I can just go on and go ahead and execute that. And then the whole time I do not have to have Ssms open at all. So again, this only works on Windows because you'd have to have Ssms installed, but it is there for you, and there's a couple of those. Looks like there's some more questions up there.
Yeah, so the questions that we had pop up, basically we had one that's saying, will ADS connect to older versions and other data sources? So, SQL Anywhere, MySQL, etc.
It will connect to, so first off, you could write your own extension, or you could potentially grab an extension that allows you to connect to some other database product from the VS Code marketplace. So you could do one of those options. Right now, Postgres and SQL Server and those kinds of things are the big ones. I know that they're working on adding more. They had announced that they're going to add more in the not too distant future.
Awesome.
So yeah.
And then also we had, can we change the output row count being displayed? It only shows the top 5,000.
I don't know about that one. I'll have to see what that one is. I'm not familiar with what exactly the context of that one is.
No problem. And we have one more question too. If you want to move to that, we could come back to that question maybe.
Sure.
Okay, great. And then we have from JD Walker, could I do SSIS in VS Code? Could
you do SSIS in VS Code?
Yes.
No, you cannot. but if you are, hopefully you're on Twitter, ping Andy Leonard and ask him if he could get some of his SSIS catalog tools working inside of Azure Data Studio. I know he's been thinking about it, and I want to give him some more encouragement to go ahead and do that. So another couple things here. There is a extension for query history that got released, I think, last month. I guess I don't actually have it installed here. Surprising. So let's just go ahead and go back here to a new query, and I will actually simply steal my query from here. Go ahead and run that. And you see there's an output pane that happens when this query completes. I've got my messages here, and I may need to reload to get this. Go back to the extension. Delete that out. So, yeah, it's enabled. Let me try it one more time. And if not, then I'm going to show you another great feature of Ssms. So no, it's not showing me my history, which is fine. Or sorry, ADS, Azure Data Studio. I just closed out of everything. I didn't have to go and save all my files or anything like that. I didn't have to take a lot of time to do all that. I was just able to go ahead and exit out, and it took care of saving the state of all the files for me. And now it's just opened back up, and probably that extension that I just installed will probably work better now. Actually, let's do this one. Be my preference. Connect to that if you can. And yes, I really do mean connect. There we go. No problem. It's connected to master. Run. And when it comes back. Oh, output pane. I forgot. Silly me. It's down here. So there's the first one where I got that error. We can see the history there. Here's the one that worked. And then I can go back to the one that did work, and I can say open query, or I could rerun it. I can clear it from my history, but I'll just do open query. And so you can see you can open a query that you ran previously and get back to it. So that's a very, very welcome addition, in my opinion, to the features here. Let's see, query history. I'm just going back to my checklist real quick. There is a query plan extension that you can download from SentryOne. There's another one from Paste Plan. So whichever one you prefer, go ahead or load them both, whatever works. And you've got that there. So, right, covered all that. So let's go to PowerShell real quick. I have the PowerShell extension loaded here. The beauty of this is that by having the PowerShell extension here, I can be able to actually see my SQL servers and see their tables or whatever I might be wanting to interact with my PowerShell script that I might be wanting to write. And I can do a PowerShell script all in the same window. You'll want to make sure that the PowerShell integrated console is running. It's not running for me right now. And so I can just click on this Command Explorer icon, which will give me a list of all the commands that are available to me, but it'll also trigger the PowerShell extension to make sure that it's got its PowerShell integrated console loaded. So it's kind of a shortcut for me. That's how I use it. So I can go back to those objects in my Object Explorer to be able to see those. And I can go ahead and start writing my PowerShell script. So I can say new -editor file, and I can say, so GroupBy.ps1, and it'll go ahead and fire up a GroupBy.ps1 PowerShell script for me. And then I can do start doing my commands like get SQL instance, localhost, oops, mistyped that one, try that again. Oh, sorry, server instance, and then localhost. I've got some helpers built in here to go ahead and help me. And I can go ahead and F8 on that and get my results back here. I can do a different command like get -SQL database, and server instance, I'll be the same. And database, on this one, actually, for whatever reason, the parameter here is called name. And I think that'll trigger it. So I could say air stats, there we go. No, that's not right. But let's see if that works. See if I got it right. There we go. And so I've got the information back. If I want all information about all my databases, not just one, I can hit F8. There we go. As I'm doing this, there's all this IntelliSense that is happening. Get dash command, see that real quick, dash module, and I can go ahead and say SQL Server, and I can see, how many commands are available to me here in the SQL Server module. And here it's dumping a list to me, and because I want to, actually, there's a couple aliases in there, and I don't want to count those, so I'm going to say commandlet. This one, ABC. And I'll just pipe that to measure. So I've got 109 commandlets in there inside the module available to me. And I can write that in here in the same spot that I'm doing some code. In fact, I might even be wanting to do some steps and then run a query or what have you. So I could go ahead and hit this little button here, do a little split screen action, even pull back here a second. Do it this way, there we go. Be able to have my query results here and be able to see my PowerShell command here, right here side by side for me. Let me see, I think I covered pretty much everything. Your GitHub, as I mentioned. So if you just go to github.com/Microsoft/Azure Data Studio, you'll be able to go to the GitHub repo and you can find the issues people have posted for it. You can submit your own feature requests. And this is also where you would go if you want to go ahead and install the insiders build like I'm using. You can do that from right here. I think I have managed to cover everything that I promised that I was going to cover. Also, one last thing. This also integrates with source control. So I can actually check in with Git or GitHub or whatever it may be from right here inside of here. So as I make a change to a file, I can go ahead and check it in right here. Maybe do my schema compare and then check that right into source control right after I get done. So see, there's some more questions if you guys could read them.
Yeah. So a question that we got is, can you use SQL and PowerShell in the same notebook? Can you kind of intersperse them, or are you limited to one language?
That is a great question. At this particular point in time, you will, the standard has always been, or at least up until not too long ago, from what I understood, was that you could only do one language per file. So one of the #1 voted items here, if you go into issues, and I'm going to filter for just mine because I'm the one who submitted it. The add PowerShell notebooks. If you want PowerShell notebooks to be available in Azure Data Studio, just come here. This is, by the way, how you upvote things. You just hit this and you give it a thumbs up. That is how you upvote things in GitHub. Seems kind of obvious after you point it out, but I'm not gonna lie, I had to ask someone, how do you upvote an item? They're like, you just hit the little thumbs up, that's it. So if you want to see that too, add PowerShell notebooks, go ahead and hit this button right here. And let's see if I can go ahead and add that to the chat. I don't know if I can.
You can just send it to me in a Slack message and I'll drop it in for you later for everyone if that's easier.
Perfect, yeah. So that's, that's how you can do that. And to upvote it, the official word is that from the SQL team themselves, is that they are well aware that this is and I'm paraphrasing, but pretty close to it, well aware that this is a high priority item for the community. And they're actively working with members of the open source community to make this feature come to life. That's more or less precisely what Vicky said a couple weeks ago on Twitter. So more questions?
Just looping back to the 5,000 rows.
Yep.
So Sid here, pardon me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, said in regarding row count, if I do select asterisk from table, it's displaying only the top 5,000. And that ties into his earlier question of, can you show more than that? Do you think that's maybe a conversation?
I would assume that you can. I've never even noticed that before. So with the total fear that I could, actually kind of kill my machine. But why not just give this a chance? So let's do this properly. Let's get rid of all that. Say, while I'm typing this out, let's go ahead and if there's another question, let's go ahead, grab that.
I think we're all set on questions. If anyone would like to submit one, now's the time before our time's up. So if you have a question, this is your moment. Oh, we have one actually. Will Azure Data Studio eventually replace Oh, no, that one's already been done. Never mind. There is no current questions.
Yep. All right, so here it's coming. This may be a configuration option. I'm not familiar with it on how many rows that can output. I would assume that it can most certainly output more than 5,000. However, what I will say though is that it could be one of those things where maybe the grid just doesn't perform well when you get past 5,000. It looks like I'm at 50,000 now, so I'm gonna, 500,000. So I think it's okay. I know that they've been doing some performance improvements to the grid as the months go by. So that may have been a previous limitation, but it looks like I've got 500,000 results right here. So I'm going to say, yes, you can. So just real quick, Aaron Nelson, SQL variant on Twitter and on GitHub. The link is aka.ms/get Azure Data Studio altogether. Obviously not broken apart like that. And there's also some other ways that you can do notebooks. The last thing, notebooks. Real quick, you can actually, like that BP check, the performance one, you can go ahead and build one out and actually run it by running a new command called Invoke SQL Notebook. I'll just do that real quick to show you what will happen. That will go ahead and run this BP check commandlet, and it'll go against my master database on my local instance, and BP check notebook, and run it here, get all the results, and put all the results into a new Jupyter book file. So that's one piece of the automation story that's coming. Let's see. Oh, looks like I misspelled it or something. I know it's in there. SQL Server Management Studio, but that's what the problem is. Let's try that again. There it is. So see, it actually generated the results file for me, added a little out to it. Let's say I wanted to run this against every instance of SQL Server in my organization. I could whip up a little PowerShell right here, run it against all my SQL instances, and I could have it generate a new file for every single one of my instances and give it the name of the server and put the date and time in the file so I overwrite myself. And then there's also just this other cool one that's only good for like, a demo like this. When it finishes building this file, we can say open editor file, and it's going to not work because I already created a file, but it should be in that same directory. So if I just go to Documents, Management Studio, yeah, there's that BP check out file that just got created. I'll just say delete that real quick. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and run that again. Same thing. Forget the space here. Hopefully this will work this time. F8. And there. Now it's opening the results of the file straight into Azure Data Studio for me in notebook format. And the point being here that it's not just opening the file that had the queries, it's actually run all the queries. And after it ran the queries, it took the results and stuck them in here. You can see the execution time on these and all that great stuff. All the results are stored in here. So I see we're close on time. I don't want to take any away from the next speaker. So I'll just call out that if you go to manage on an instance and you go to SQL agent, you'll see this notebook thing here, and BP check, you can now actually set these up as jobs and run them. And you could actually just have a notebook sitting there, and in case something goes wrong, then go and run this notebook and gather up the results. But you have a plan of what queries you're already going to run and get those results back. And so that could be something that might be important to your organization for troubleshooting. So with that, I'll call it a day and let the next speaker get set up.